Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining us as we continue our summer of devotions for the UPCI Jordan. My name is Brother Jeffrey Hudiger, and this week we're going to have a 5-lesson series on the topic of faith. Your faith matters. What an incredible topic. I'm going to start today with Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11 is often referred to as the Hall of Faith. I'm not going to read the entire chapter. I'll let you do that on your own. But I would like to just summarize, and maybe I'll point out a thing or two along the way that's jumped out at me. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. You can't see it. You hope for it. It's the substance. It's by faith that the elders obtained a good report. It's by faith that we base our understanding of how the worlds were formed. It's by faith that Abel offered a more excellent sacrifice. By faith, Enoch was translated. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. We have to do two things. We must believe that He is, and we must believe that He is a rewarder of them that diligently seek Him. It is by faith that Noah, who had never seen rain, built an ark. I can't imagine how it must have been. Hey, what are you doing? I'm building an ark. Maybe they might even need to ask, what's an ark? It's a boat. Why are we building a boat? Because it's going to rain. What's rain? Can you imagine building a boat because it's going to rain and flood and you've never seen rain before? By faith, Abraham sojourned in a strange land. Can't imagine how that conversation must have went. Abraham says, hey, Sarah, pack your bags. We're leaving. Where are we going? I don't know. Sarah, by faith, Sarah conceived. By faith, Abraham offered Isaac, believing that God could raise him up. It was at this time that Isaac said, Dad, where's the sacrifice? And Abraham offered those prophetic words both for Abraham and Isaac's present, but also for the future, when Abraham said, the Lord shall prepare himself a sacrifice. It was by faith that Isaac blessed Jacob. By faith, Jacob blessed the sons of Joseph. By faith, Joseph said, I see a day coming when we are going to leave Egypt, and I want you to take me with you when you go. It's by faith that Moses refused to be Pharaoh's son, but instead he chose to suffer the afflictions rather than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. It was by faith that Moses believed the reproach of Christ was greater than the riches of the treasures of Egypt. Again, this reference to this prophetic Messiah that's going to come that they never got to see, but they believed it was going to happen. It's by faith that they forsook Egypt, seeing Him who is invisible. It's by faith Moses kept the Passover. It's by faith that the children of Israel passed through the Red Sea as on dry ground. It's by faith that they saw the walls of Jericho fall. It's by faith that Rahab perished not with them that believed not. And then the writer says, I don't have time to tell you about Gideon, about Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets. But it's by faith that they subdued kingdoms. They wrought righteousness. They obtained promises. They stopped lions' mouths. They quenched the violence of fire. They escaped the sword. They made strong out of weakness. They were made strong out of weakness. They waxed valiant. They turned armies to flight, and they received dead back to life again. It was by faith that they did these things, all without having received the promise of the Messiah, the promise of salvation, the promise that He would not leave us comfortless, but that He would come to us. All these things were done by faith. I hope that you can feel your faith rising. I know I can as I go through these accounts and I see that Abel had to make a decision, and it was his faith that mattered. Enoch had to make a decision, and it was his faith. Noah had to make a decision to build an ark, to labor for years, to see something happen that he never had seen happen before. All these people, all of these accounts, these heroes of faith and the decisions that they made on a daily basis. You know, I came upon something one day that I haven't heard anyone really preach or teach or expound upon. It's in Genesis chapter 39. This is the point where Joseph has been thrown into a pit, and his brothers lied to his father about his demise, and they sold him into slavery, and somehow he ends up in Potiphar's house, and Potiphar's wife entices him, and he refuses her advances. The part that I find interesting, you know, we tell this story how he was then thrown into prison, and he interpreted the dreams for the butler and the baker, and years go by, he's in the prison still, and finally he's remembered, and then he interprets the dreams for Pharaoh, and finally he arrives at this position of power, still not with his family, still not with his father, still not where he wants to be, certainly not the way that he probably saw it in his mind's eye when he told his brothers, "You're going to bow down to me," and all those different stories, dreams that he probably should have wisely kept to himself, but he didn't. But look at Genesis chapter 39, verse 10. It says, "It came to pass as she spake to Joseph day by day." You know, I never realized that this was something that went on and on and on. I thought it happened one time, and, you know, she grabbed his coat and yelled for the guards, and he got thrown in prison. It says day by day, and that kind of spoke to me that we tell these stories about Enoch, about Abraham, about Noah, and we tell them as if they knew how the story was going to end. We tell the story of Daniel being thrown into the lion's den, but we already know the end of the story. We already know that the lions' mouths were stopped, and he was able to be taken out of the lion's den the next day, and his life was spared. We already know that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown into the fiery furnace, but then the king saw the fourth man in the fire, and they walked out with their hair wasn't singed, and their clothes didn't smell like smoke, and they weren't burned. We already know the end. They didn't know the end. You have to realize they had to make those decisions by faith. Their faith mattered on a daily basis. One thing after another after another. And so I hope today, as we go through these lessons this week, I hope that you will realize that every day you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to make a decision to exercise your faith or to remain in your fear. You have an opportunity to stand up and say, "I'm going to believe God that He can supply my need, that He can provide deliverance, that He can help me in my despair, and that He will," or that I'm going to remain in my condition. Like Noah, like Abraham, like Moses, like David, I hope that you will come to a greater understanding this week that your faith matters. I hope that you'll join us again tomorrow as we continue in this series. May God richly bless you today.